Coming up on Network Africa, President of Somalia, Mohamed Abdullahi, has offered amnesty to Al-Shabaab militants. And 700 migrants have been rescued at sea by humanitarian groups off the coast of Libya. Plus, 7 Nigerians and 28 Eritreans captured by IS militants have been set free by the Libyan authorities. Thanks for joining us on this Thursday edition. I am BC Adebayo. We begin the program in Somalia, where President Mohamed has given 6 days for militants to surrender in exchange for training, employment and education, after which it would wage a war against them. The announcement for an amnesty is a key move in his 4-month-old presidency. The president made this call after a suicide attack near a government building in the capital Mogadishu killed 7 people, and a spate of kidnappings of aid workers by armed militants in the drought-hit country. During a press briefing, he said he had replaced senior security officers in the intelligence service and police force in preparation for the escalating war against the militants. Analysts say the new security measure is about reinforcing gains made by the UN mission in Somalia and the Somalian forces. Meanwhile, another 5 aid workers have been abducted by armed men from the central Somali town of Beledweyne. The staff, who include 2 volunteers, a nurse, a driver and a veterinary, were working with the region's Veterinary Medical Association. The kidnapped workers were on an immunization program. No group has claimed responsibility for the abduction, but Islamic militant group Al-Shabaab has released 4 aid workers who were working for the World Health Organization in the southwestern town of Luke. And still in Somalia, the Special Representative of the United Nations Secretary General for Somalia, Michael Keaton, says more work needs to be done to avoid another crisis caused by drought in the country. He made this known when he visited Somaliland to assess the impact of drought that has affected 2 million people and their livestock.
The Special Representative of the United Nations Secretary General for Somalia, Michael Keaton, concluded a 2-day visit to Somaliland to assess the impact of the prolonged drought on its population. Keating visited communities affected by the drought in Lakar village, located about 70 kilometers west of the Somaliland capital of Hargeisa. He visited a water distribution site established by a local non-governmental organization called Health Education Agro-Pastoralist Liaison, HEAL, with funding from UNICEF. The partnership of HEAL and UNICEF is providing safe drinking water and hygiene kits to local schools and approximately 2,700 households. The SRSG emphasized the need to develop long-term solutions to the plight of Somaliland residents who've been hard hit by the current drought and will remain vulnerable to the recurrence of similar humanitarian crisis in the foreseeable future.
In addition to responding immediately, there's the problem of how do you recover from all this? You know, how are we going to rebuild people's capacities to cope? Because who knows, there may be yet another drought in a year's time or 2 years' time.
Keating also visited a maternal and child health and nutrition clinic in Gambia town, west of Hargeisa, to assess the medical needs of the local population. Foreign Minister Shire accompanied the SRSG on the field visit and stated that hundreds of livestock animals have died due to a lack of water and pasture, depriving many pastoral communities of their only source of income. Keating held talks with senior government officials led by President Ahmed Mohamed Mahamoud Silanyo, members of the National Drought Response Committee, civil society representatives, and United Nations agencies. The discussions focused on how to scale up and improve coordination of ongoing drought response activities to help meet the needs of affected communities.
The people of Somaliland should not have to go through this again. So we've been talking about recovery and resilience plans, how the UN can contribute to the work of Somaliland government and civil society in preparing for recovery and resilience. And we've also been talking about the role of the UN more broadly here in Somaliland.
The SRSG pledged to redouble efforts to draw international attention to the precarious situation in Somaliland and raise more funds to respond more effectively to the humanitarian needs. While communities struggle to cope with the challenges of malnutrition and displacement, humanitarian aid workers warned that the possible onset of rain during the upcoming goose season could trigger flooding and a spike in waterborne diseases such as cholera.
The people of Gambia head to the polls to choose members of their one-chamber parliament today. Expectations are high under this new administration led by Adama Barrow, who has promised to carry out political, security and media reforms. A coalition of 7 parties that supported Mr. Barrow during last year's presidential election has collapsed, with candidates now competing against each other. This is the first free polls in the Gambia since Yahya Jammeh left power after more than 22 years. During Yahya's rule, the National Assembly was frequently ignored as the president enacted executive decrees without consultation. The U.S. Embassy in Sudan has condemned a police raid on a church in the capital Khartoum, where 1 person was killed following a land ownership dispute. Another person was injured and 13 were arrested in the April 3rd incident. The church members were staging a 2-week sit-in when the police stormed the property. An embassy statement called the attack heinous and said it was deeply saddened about the incident at the Omdurman Evangelical School and Omdurman Presbyterian Church. It says that the police action is linked to a dispute over the land with a private investor claiming to have purchased the property. The church, which runs a school on the property, was founded by American Presbyterian missionaries in 1924. And here's a sad one coming from Zimbabwe, where at least 30 people have been killed in a road accident in central Zimbabwe after their bus heading to neighboring South Africa hit a haulage truck. Eyewitnesses say the bus caught fire immediately when it came into contact with the side of the truck, while another witness reports that it was impossible to evacuate the casualties because the bodies were burned to ashes. Survivors have been rushed to Mvuma District Hospital and Derfontein Mission Hospital.